Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the part of the world you are connecting in from. Welcome to the Enable Head Nerds Cove Data Protection Retention Policies Overview Bootcamp. My name is Eric Harless. I'm your head backup nerd here at Enable, and I will be taking you through this hour-long session today. I see we've got a few folks that are still getting connected into the audio inside of GoToWebinar, so we'll give them a chance to get connected while we go through some quick housekeeping and making the lawyers happy. We may talk about some features or functions today that are not yet generally available, something that may be in alpha state, beta state, early customer preview, engineering preview, or even being just considered as part of the roadmap. I'll do my best to preface any of those type of statements or comments as forward-looking statements. Please don't make any licensing or purchasing decisions based on features or functions that have not yet reached a GA status. As I said, though, this is a boot camp where we want to get feedback from the partners. So feel free to drop any questions, comments, or inquiries into the questions section of GoToWebinar, and I'll take my some time during the session today, if applicable, to answer those, or I will follow up post-session, depending on the type of questions and comments that come across. For our agenda today, obviously we've been through some introductions. I'll do a little bit more of an introduction of the feature set that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to kick into live demo. This is definitely not death by PowerPoint today, so we'll go through a overview of the feature and function that we're talking about, in this case, which is the Cove Data Protection Backup Retention Policies. We'll look at how you create those retention policies. We'll talk about deployment with those, differences amongst the retention policies now versus the legacy product definitions you would have utilized prior. We'll look at how you apply those, how you can identify those in the console and assign to your devices. We'll talk about backwards compatibility and things of that nature. We'll look at the storage impacts or storage benefits of retention policies, both to your local speed vault and to cloud storage. And then finally, we'll talk about how you can go about expiring some of your archives through some advanced scripting options that I've introduced. We'll do a wrap up with Q&A if there's any appropriate questions that are still outstanding. And then I will share next steps where you can get additional training, additional boot camps, events, and tools. For those of you who have not met before, my name is Eric Harless. My title or my role here at Enable is that of Head Backup Nerd. I've been with the organization now a little bit over 11 years, that entire time working on Enable's line or brand of backup and recovery products, obviously under a few different names and brands throughout the various years. My career's spanned 25 plus years in the data protection, business continuity, replication, high availability space. And I've handled a fair amount of different roles, from sales, support, system engineering, and product management. However, my last 5 years here at Enable have been in this head nerd role, where I'm working to be a product advocate, a community lead, to drive or expand out a group of like-minded backup nerds and backup gurus to help support, expand, and further the product along. If you'd like to reach out to me via email, it's eric.harless@n-able.com. If you want to reach me on Twitter or X, it's @backup_nerd. You can also find me on various other social media platforms like Reddit, like LinkedIn, I draw a blank on that one. Facebook groups, Slack channels, there we go, just to name a few. But feel free, drop me an email, use the QR code. I'm going to show up a little bit later to book some time with me, whatever makes the most sense for you. If you've got any of my scripts that you've pulled from the automation cookbook or various GitHub pages, feel free to utilize the contact information inside of that in order to schedule some time with me as well. So, before I kick into the demo portion of this, I want to high level just mention what retention policies are. Retention policies are a new way of thinking about retention inside of Cove Data Protection. It was introduced to act as a replacement to what we referred to as products previously. Product definitions allowed you to set a base retention value for your devices. At one point, we allowed you to set 10 years, 15 years, 100 years, infinite years as far as base retention. That meant that every single backup session up until that maximum retention value was retained. And while that works fine if you're doing daily or weekly backups, once we moved into high frequency capable backups and profiles where you could do a backup every 15 minutes per data source, every hour, every 2, 4, every 12 hours for individual data sources, then you end up with a lot of sessions per day, and that is a lot of sessions to retain for greater than a year. It increases the size of your backup register. It increases the size of your dedupe pool. It could consume a lot of space on your local speed vaults, and of course, it consumes a lot of space inside of the Enable Cloud. So we did make a change well over a year ago that limited base retention inside of products to a 365-day window. And anything outside of 365 days of retention, you would utilize the archiving function. Archives could be applied as a secondary schedule after you deploy the device. It can be pushed out via remote command or set as part of a deployment policy, as part of an automation script, things of that nature. And the archive points basically said keep the next backup after a scheduled archive point. So if you set an archive schedule for end of week, end of month, end of year, the next backup that ran after the end of the month, after the end of the week, or after the end of the year would be retained indefinitely as an archive point. And that allowed you to keep long-term retention without having to have every single hourly backup that was generated. But that still left a lot of sessions. So if you were keeping a year's worth of dailies, then that kind of meant that you're going to have a year's worth of sub-dailies or intra-daily backup sessions. So still a lot of individual sessions to worry about, figuring out which one you want to restore from, which ones are good, which ones are bad. So we wanted to simplify that for you with a grandfather, father, son style of retention model that you guys are all fairly familiar with if you've used any other backup applications out there. So with that in mind, let me kick you into the product, and we can go through where we've come from and where we're going to. Okay, we're going to start out inside of the Cove data protection dashboard. And if for some reason during the session today, if you don't see the slides changing or they're not lining up with what I'm talking about, please do feel free to make comments in the question section of GoToWebinar. At the same time, it could be a question about the product, or audio is not coming through, audio is stuttering, it's breaking up. Please talk to the microphone directly, those kind of things. I'm happy to make adjustments, okay? If for some reason you need to drop out and come back in, feel free to let me know you're dropping out and coming back. Sometimes just reconnecting or going to a non-VoIP type of environment or non-wireless connection could improve the GoToWebinar performance. Anyway, inside of the Cove data protection console, if you look at the left-hand navigation over here, we are going to see, if we come into the left-hand navigation here inside of Cove, and we look over here, we're going to see profiles and retention policies. Historically, retention policies here would have said products. We're going to click on this. And what you're going to see now is new retention policies, and this is still listed as being in preview. And there is still a value here where you can share feedback, share your interaction, your experiences with our new retention policies. Yes, these are rolled out. Yes, these are GA, but it doesn't mean we won't make changes based on customer feedback. So that preview state is still here. There are links to documentation. So only successful backup sessions will be retained. These sessions are marked as completed and completed with errors. If a backup fails, the system will store the next available successful session as that retention point. You can see here, there are some nice, simple drop downs in a calendar style view to allow me to choose how many intra-daily sessions to keep. And I can keep all those intra-dailies over the course of the next 1 to 30 days. In this case, by default, it's 7. I can keep the last backup of the day for, by default, the next 30 days, although it could be anywhere as few as 14 days up to 365 days, retaining the same 365-day base retention that you had with the prior product definition. The new features, though, that replace that archive capability effectively is the ability to keep the last good backup of the week for X number of weeks up to 52 weeks, to keep the last backup of the month for up to 36 months, and the last backup of the year for up to 10 years. So this grandfather, father, son style of retention combined with automatic expiration of your intra-daily, so you don't have every single 15-minute or hourly session being maintained for 365 days or so, can be very, very efficient for your backup register, for your local speed vault, and for Enable Cloud Storage. If you look over on the left-hand side, as I said, you can see that there are the new retention policies. We build for you automatically when you start a new tenant, new trial, new customer, a 30-day default. That 30-day default is the only new retention policy that's going to show up inside of your platform. And you might see a classic policy, what we used to refer to as products, typically referred to as all-in. In comparison, a 30-day policy, 7 days of intradailies, 30 days of the last backup per day. If we go down to all-in, it's keeping a 28-day retention policy for all of the individual data sources. And then, of course, you could turn archiving on for that one. You could set up a profile to run backups every 15 minutes, every hour, every X number of hours to have those intradailies. But as you can see, with this new 30-day default, we are giving you a little bit longer retention, two extra days above and beyond what is defined in the all-in policy. So you're not losing any retention there, you're actually gaining a little bit of retention, and you've got full customization of those retention policies. So if you don't like 30 days as the default and you want to change this to something a little bit more similar to what you're used to, you can very easily come in here and rename this to 28 days, adjust my settings down here, down to a 28-day component, turn off just to one intradaily backup session per day. And this is effectively mirroring the all-in configuration. And you could rename this 28 days all-in or some variation of that. Obviously, I can't have a one-for-one name match to all-in, but you can get it very, very close to that configuration if that's exactly what you need. If you wanted to take all-in and expand upon it like you would have done prior with archiving, you could turn around and then say, okay, I want to keep 52 weeks and 36 months, and let's do 7 years. So now I've got that same base all-in retention capability with longer term retention, keeping weeklies, monthlies, and yearlies available. So effectively, you're getting up to 10 years of retention now without a much larger footprint than that base all-in, where you're getting 28 restore points. Now I've got, let's see, 52 plus 36 plus another 7. What is that? That's 88. 96 additional restore points here. 96 additional restore points is a whole lot less, a much smaller, more efficient set of restore points than keeping 365 days of hourlies per data source. In this structure, I can hit save now. It's going to adjust this and modify my default. And the reason we have this default, we used to, when you deployed in the classic model, if you deployed without specifying a product, it always deployed with the all-in policy. Now, whenever you deploy without specifying a retention policy, it will choose whatever your default is. So if your default is 365 days with end of week, end of month, and end of year, that's what it will use. But we understand not everybody's going to keep or need to utilize that in every situation. So you can still deploy with any one of these custom defined retention policies that you've created. We can see here I've got a 30-day, 6-month, 3-year. So 30 days, 6 months, 3 years from a retention perspective. I've got one here in a 365 GFS 7-year. So 365, 7 years with weeklies and monthlies there in the mix. A 90-day, 36-month, 10-year. 90 days, 36 months, 10 years of end-of-year retention points. So lots of different options to comply with different customer needs. These can be applied at time of deployment as part of the automatic deployment parameters. It can be deployed through automation policies and scripts as well as a script parameter when you deploy. You can still continue to use classic products as well. So if you've got a product that just makes sense for you and you really don't want to move into these structures, at least as it stands right now, yes, you can still continue to deploy with the all-in product. You will need to specify that as part of the deployment string. You can come in here and adjust and define these, bringing these up to 365 days. Oh, I'm sorry, this one's locked. Can't edit that one. Let me duplicate it. So now we've got a clone. Now I can come in here, 365 days, and configure my retention for individual data sources. Now, you might notice there are a lot of additional tabs up here at the top for these classic policies or classic products that do not exist or are not available up here when viewing the 30-day default. And the reasoning behind that is we consider these to be advanced settings. These will be coming to retention policies as an advanced tab or an advanced setting at some point in the near future. What's in here today? A lot of things that you may not really have a need or a use case to use. So for that reason, we've hidden those behind the API. They're not currently available in the GUI. However, if you do find that you need one of these features or functions that is currently listed inside of these advanced properties added into a new retention policy, please reach out to our support department. Feel free to reach out with me, schedule some time. It's a very, very quick API call in order to turn on one of these features, functions, or settings inside of the new retention policies before we have this new advanced tab available as part of the GA. What's in here? Well, obviously you can look inside of your UI. This is all features that are available to you, but what's in here? Advanced scheduling, automatic file selection, the ability to set up as a no restore or restore only backup manager policy. The ability to turn on or turn off archiving or to hide the backup accelerator, to allow or disallow the virtual drive or VSS snapshot management. Mostly these are settings or features that are always turned on and very rarely turned off. So there's not a big reason to have these easily exposed and in the way. There's other limitations that you can turn on or turn off. You can break or disable certain data source or client platform settings or allows for the backup manager. For example, if you didn't want to allow the backup manager to protect Exchange or SharePoint or MySQL or system state, you could remove it here, and then when that definition is applied to the environment, that policy is applied, then those options would not be visible in the GUI. This can also be restricted today via profile, so it's kind of a moot point having it here as a restriction. Client platforms, also kind of an obsolete bit of technology now. You can see that you can limit or restrict the operating system versions. As you can see, there's the ability here to limit or restrict Windows XP or Windows 8 environments, Windows 7, Windows Vista environments, all legacy platforms that have pretty much reached their end of support or even end of extended support in lots of cases. So we really don't restrict now based on operating system as part of client platforms. The only real exceptions here might be the ability to block a Linux or a Mac OS environment if you did not want to allow deployment into those kind of configurations. The backup manager, the ability to adjust your backup selections within the client, to allow filters to select and deselect what you want to back up. This can be adjusted in profiles now, so not really beneficial as part of products. Branding, this is the ability to turn on or turn off, to utilize custom branding inside of the GUI. Something I really like. Why you would disable it, I really don't have a good reason for it. So there are obviously settings that we may or may not extend into the final advanced property settings. Performance, these are tabs that will likely make it. The ability to turn on throttling, to enable or disable a local speed vault, and to be able to set a maximum bandwidth throttle per your retention policy or product. And then the security tab allows me to set some maximums. Do I want to, and other security settings, do I want to back up user rights? When I'm backing up files, do I capture the user permissions with them? Do I restore those user permissions? Do I allow remote management? That's the remote connection into the backup manager through our reverse tunnel. Do I want to honor or ignore the files not the backup registry key as a security setting? Do I want to cap or limit the maximum file size in gigabytes or selection size in gigabytes, or maximum selection size per individual data source, or maximum use storage values for a given backup manager? These are effectively hard throttles or hard thresholds, so that when a backup device gets above a certain size, that it will throw a quota warning and require you to either adjust the quota or make changes to your selections or your retention to get under a capped size, kind of a pay-as-you-go cell phone plan where you buy your minutes effectively. So as I said, these advanced settings are looking to be removed or also have been removed from the retention policies, but they will come back into some type of advanced tab or advanced settings when dealing with policies in the future, set as a global setting, as a cloud-based setting, things of that nature. Something else that's new here, obviously we cloned one here. We can see that cloning, we can see the deletion of these. If you go down your tree, you come down here from SE Demo into German Industries, what you're going to notice is that now all those retention policies are locked, as well as any of the new classic products that we had defined, because those were defined higher in the partner tree than where you are currently at. So I can't, I can still use these for German Industries, but I can't edit them here. So I need to edit one or create one specifically for this end customer. I could come and grab one as a baseline and clone it, or hit add new retention policy over here on the far right. Something else to notice is the retention policies do have a retention ID. You can see that ID here, as does the classic all-in ID 1. Shows you how long that guy's been around. All-in clone, we just created, so there's your ID for that. That ID is visible in product. It's visible in the it's visible in the APIs. It's another quick way to validate something, especially when you've got very, very similar names. You can work with or interact with that ID. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about how we would deploy with these retention policies. So if you come in and go to the Add Device Wizard, we've made a couple changes here that are meant to simplify the deployment process, standardize it, regardless of whether you're using private key encryption or system managed passphrase based encryption. So when we come in here and we hit servers and workstations, what you're going to notice is this unified installation workflow now. There's a choice up here in the upper right to do a documents installation. If you'd like to deploy a documents device, that is a purpose-built deployment designed to back up around 100 different file extensions. If you hit the little I here, it will give you information on that purpose-built configuration or light version of Cove. And you can click this Learn More link. It's right here someplace, if I can get down to it. There, I cannot seem to get to it fast enough. There we go. This Learn More gives me my documents guide, including the supported features, file types, and exclusions, and the installation instructions on how to deploy documents inside of your environment. Deploying a standard device, what we're going to do is we're going to define the customer. We're going to then define the retention policy and an optional backup profile as part of that deployment. This is going to look very similar to what you guys are used to from a deployment perspective, with a couple slight modifications. The fact that you can do retention policies and profiles together as part of the same set of settings is unique. So we've picked a German Industry already for my dropdown, although I could add more customers to my tree here if I like. We can choose retention policies, and we can grab any of the new retention policies or the classic products that we want to deploy with. So we'll use this new 365-day GFS 7-year. The profile, you're going to have some predefined ones that were created when you started your Cove trial. You may have defined your own since then. And this is a 1-hour RPO, meaning it's running a backup every 1 hour for the configured data sources. So we'll choose that. And we'll choose our operating system. In this case, we want to do a Mac OS deployment. And we want to do it as a managed encryption model, meaning it's going to be a system-generated passphrase that you can access from the management console if you are a security officer. And we're going to hit next. Historically, we would have given you a installation package here, which would have been probably BM# with a GUID that tied to the partner name or partner tenant, and then another # and a multi-digit profile ID. But now, because you've got profile IDs and retention policies, as well as that customer GUID, we've decided to simplify this a little bit for you. So in this V1 configuration, it is using this GUID to identify the customer, the retention policy, and the defined profile, all in one fell swoop. It's generating a installation package, in this case it's for Mac OS, that can be used to deploy one or hundreds of machines every time you run this installer, it's going to add a new device based on the computer's name and a randomly generated 5-digit character at the end underneath German Industries. So this unique installer is coded or keyed directly to German Industries with this retention policy and this retention profile applied to it. To download this installer, I can do a couple things. One, I can just grab a generic installer from the download site and then rename it to this. Or I can hit the download button. And you'll notice when I mouse over this, you can see the URL in the lower left corner there. It is the generic MXB Mac OS X x86_64.pkg. But when I hit the download button, I get a uniquely named file. And it's this file exactly right here. You're going to run this file on each individual machine you want to deploy the backup manager on. If you run it twice, that's not a problem. It will only deploy once. It will not overwrite or create a second instance for it. So don't worry about an accidental secondary deployment. It is a full silent install with no pop-ups and no prompts. You do want to be very careful though, if you downloaded this file a couple times, is you don't want to rename this file. So you'll notice here we've downloaded a second time and it's appended this parentheses 1 on the tail end of it. You don't want to utilize that one. You do want to maintain a clear, clean name structure for these. Do remove any things being appended by your browser, by your download process that could change the name. If you modify the name, there is no guarantee it's going to deploy inside of that organization. Since it is, though, just a generic installer with an updated file name, you can ensure that this file is always the latest by utilizing PowerShell custom scripts to always pull the latest backup manager and rename it to this structure as part of your deployment process. Those are scripts I already have available for you written and that are easily to be downloaded. If we were to go back, I'm sorry, one more thing. Let's copy these instructions to the clipboard. It's going to give me a kind of a rough look at this, and we'll go here to Notepad, and we'll paste these topics in. You can see here was my instructions for Windows, my instructions for Mac. Basically, it's telling me to download the backup manager generically, and it is asking me to save the installation package as this name, and then do not rename it or change it from this, and then run this across one or more devices, and then all those devices will automatically appear in the all-in dashboard inside of Cove. So do a quick time check here, and we're going to check questions. Looking really good, beautiful. We are going to go back here, just one. If you wanted to pull this down, you wanted to grab it for Linux as well. We'll come in here and grab Linux, and we'll hit next. And we are going to download this one as well. You'll notice here that in this download, I got a completely different package GUID. We're going to go back and come in next and hit finish again. So we've got a couple different installers here we can work with from a deployment perspective, and they're going to add new devices in the net BIOS name, underscore, and a random 5-digit structure. Now, how do you know if a device is deployed with a new retention policy or an older product? A couple ways to go about identifying that. We're going to go to columns, and in here we're going to search for retention. So inside of retention, there's 18 different columns tied to retention. So we're going to turn a couple of those on. We're going to turn on file and folder retention so we can see what that is. We'll look at system state retention as well, just two of the most common data sources. And we'll do Microsoft SQL retention. So 3 there that we're going to work with. We're going to turn on retention policy, which is already on, retention policy ID, and retention units. And we're going to hit save. So what that's done is added new columns to my dashboard, and we're going to scroll all the way over to the right here. And what we can see is retention units custom. So this means it is using a custom retention policy. And we can see the maximum retention value that is set up for a given data source. So in this case, it's 30 days. In this case, it's 1,095 days. 3,650 days. So that's going to equate to the longest retained period that you've got set between the dailies, weeklies, monthlies, and yearly periods. So obviously to have a 10-year restore point, we've got backups that could go back as far as 3,650 days. Let's check and see if I've got any non-custom retention policies in here. Let's go over. Days. Here's an example. So here's a device that is set to a day-based retention model, and we can see file and folders are set to 28 days. System state SQL are not part of this definition, so a standard all-in retention model most likely. And we'll scroll all the way back over to the left, and we can see that's a documents device. So basic documents retention versus 30-day, 90-day, and so on. So I do recommend when you create these to define a retention policy name that is self-describing. Now, maybe you don't need something this long. It could be 90D, 36M, 10Y, and it would still be self-describing and nice and easy for you during selection. Now, how do you take a device that's got an old retention policy on it or even an existing retention policy and change that around? So let's take a couple of these here now. And let's come up here and assign a retention policy. What you're going to get in assigning a retention policy is a drop-down, and you'll be able to see the new retention policies and the older classic policies. Now, once you have applied a new retention policy, either deployed with or applied one after the fact, you cannot revert it back to an old retention policy. You can see your retention policy has been assigned to 0 devices. So I cannot revert these back to the old or classic retention policies once I've moved into the new structure, because that would introduce the potential for data loss. It would start to expire those older restore points greater than 365 days if you had them. So no way to go backwards. It is a one-way migration from the old model into the new one once you are ready. Let's see, let's talk about the storage impact a little bit as well. So if we come over to the left-hand navigation here, we shrink our dashboards, and we're gonna come down here to historical charts. Historical charts are gonna show me my used storage capacity over time. So we're in here, and we're looking at my usage over the course of the last month. We're showing trend lines for German industries. We're going to come up here and go as a whole, however, and look across all my devices. So we can see here over the course of the last month, my used storage in the neighborhood of about 17.6 terabytes back in January the 23rd of last year, and about 7.2 terabytes of selected data. So I'm more than 2x, not quite 3x of a selected to used ratio. And that was because I was maintaining a lot of intra-daily backups. This was before we rolled out or released these new retention policies into preview mode and then of course into GA state. You can see here continued growth throughout the year up until the point around mid-year when we started to introduce the retention policy functionality in limited preview on our internal devices. So we can see we started to take this down. We managed to get up to 20, so almost 3x, but we started to take that down, 19. 18. So that expiration of those intra-dailies, those end of months, those intra-monthlies, intra-weeklies that we no longer needed to keep, it allowed me to get it down to a very good restore point. We're only getting around 1.5x my selected size in my used storage. So some really good retention. Retention didn't go for years at a time now, and keeping a very, very close to a single selected size footprint. And we've been able to maintain something very, very similar to that kind of ratio, since August of last year up through the current point in time. So 7.9 terabytes of data selected, 12.4 terabytes of used storage in this configuration. You can expect something very, very similar. This relationship of selected size to used storage is also the amount of storage that's on your speed vault for a given device. Keep this in mind. If all of your devices for a given organization were sharing the same network share for a speed vault, then I would need 12.4 terabytes of data of space in order to have a speed vault local for everything. And that's much easier, much more economical than maintaining a 21 terabyte speed vault. You're not going to see this as much of a drastic hit once you turn on retention policies. You'll start to see it do cleaning behind the scenes, so it'll be a gradual decline over the course of the first few weeks. Then you'll start to see some additional drop-offs, like we see this major decline right here, and then starting to mellow out for about another month or so before you start to see some more additional drops. So it will be staggered out over time. This opens up a question in the chat that came up, which is around archiving. For those of you that are not familiar with archiving, and actually, I guess I want to show you the backup clients as well. So if we come into a backup client, here's my local Cove client coming in through a remote connection gateway. This looks like a South African device. If you go to the backup manager here, you'll see that it says we're on 24.12, a retention policy, 30 days. That's my default retention policy. And we can see the profile that's applied and so on. So those are the current configurations. If we go to the Preferences tab, we want to check and see if there are archives here. This guy has got 41.7 gigabytes of data selected, only consuming 17.3 gigabytes of data in the enabled cloud. So we'll check him really quick for archive points, hopefully. It is taking a moment to connect. I might need to reconnect. Let me refresh my browser and see that connection. Yeah, that connection expired on me. Let's try a different device. We want to find something that's got some archives in place. So we're going to come in here and go to More and Columns. And let's search for archives. So we can see archive size, save. Now, when I save these columns, by the way, it's putting them into the current view, but unless I come up here and hit this 3 dots or the Save View button here, I won't actually retain the columns I've added when I come back into this view later. We can see that there's 7.3 terabytes of archive data on this particular device. So this archive data was being used for extended retention above and beyond a 30-day or a 365-day window. So we're in the device properties. We're going to go and launch the backup manager, get a remote connection to it. We'll see this is probably a South African device also. Yes, it is. So it'll take it just a moment to load up. While it's loading, we can look at a local device. Here's a local host, port 5000 device with my custom branding as well. So we've got the South African device and my local device that are both going to be coming up here. My local device, if I click on Backup Manager here, we can see product is still referenced because it's using a legacy retention product, and this is the name of that product, an all-in 90-day retention. So this would be a great candidate to convert over to retention policies at some point and start to save some space. But let's look at how we might clean this guy up as well. Still loading, so we'll work here first. What I've done to help you clean up archive points, because the expiration of dailies, weeklies, monthlies, and yearlies are only going to expire base retention that you've got set up. It does not auto expire your archive points. We did not want to be destructive to your data that you had already chosen as an archive. So archives still need to be cleaned by you manually in the Backup Manager client. We are looking at some other options for that, and I'll give you some scripts or some tools that you can use to help with this cleaning as well. So come in here, Preferences, go to Archiving, and what we can see is there were a couple archive rules that are set up. I could add an additional archive rule because it's still available and functioning inside of this older product-based retention. But I can come in here and clean up my archives as well. And you can see I've got archives in place that go from 6/18/2024, when this functionality was originally rolled out internally. And I've got archives going back a ways into 2024, all the way back to January the 1st, 2024. And that's a lot of archives. So let's say I wanted to expire the last 6 months worth of archives here to get rid of some of this old data, or I wanted to just expire the ones that were for the network shares or for MySQL or for certain configurations. Well, that's a lot of clicking inside of the UI before I can come down here and hit the clean up archiving button. Okay, so you know, I don't even know how many that is here, but it's a lot. I guess I could say highlight the word completed and copy it, do a quick Control F and search for completed, and there's 724 references to completed here, but if it was a failed, then it's not listed. So no real good way to see exactly how many you have, and especially no easy way to select which archives you want to clean. So for that reason, I've actually built a browser plugin that's available to you. It's available in the Chrome Chrome store, although it is compatible with Chrome on a Mac, Chrome on Windows, as well as IE, which is based on the Chromium platform now. So the tool or the browser plugin is designed to be a backup manager archive cleanup tool. This archive cleanup tool allows you to come in and click on your cleanup archive screen. And once you then hit the plugin, it is going to let me know exactly how many references there are in here. So there's 869 of those. I'm going to deselect all of them, and I can toggle all. So now all 869 are now selected. We'll toggle all of those again, or deselect all of those off. I could toggle just completed. That's 724 of my 869. Toggle those back off. I could toggle my errors, 13. I could toggle my failed. I could toggle my failed and then toggle all. So now I'm looking at everything but the failed, for example. We could toggle a search. Let's deselect all and toggle a search here based on SQL, and we'll toggle a search for those. All my MySQL and MS SQL are now selected. So a couple different variations of how you can get those selected in my environment. Even something as easy as let's deselect anything that's older than 6 months. That was something I wanted to do earlier. Deselect all greater than 6 months. Deselect all. Let's try that one more time. Let's do greater than 9 months. There we go. So these are not selected, and they're still available and be retained as archives. But anything that's older than 9 months should be selected. Yes, there we go. Getting down here to April 23rd, 2024. Those are now all selected. I can come in here and then do a toggle on SQL or toggle on failed, and then start to adjust this even further. The next action would be to come down here and hit the cleanup button at the bottom. Now you'll notice the cleanup button is grayed out, and that's because I did not want the browser plugin to have the direct clean capability. I really only wanted it to make the selections easy for you. So you do still need to make one selection or deselection inside of the UI here before it will expose that cleanup button, and it's interacting now with the actual Cove APIs. This plugin is available, like I said, in the Google Store. A quick about here, information on myself, Reddit scripts, my Neat link, any legalese. This is something that is written by me. It doesn't fit under any enable support contracts of the like. Question mark here, what do we have on that? Let's take a quick look here. Documentation takes me to archive session information around the backup manager, understanding how the enabling archive and cleaning archives. So it should be very helpful in making those mass selections to purge out archives. So you can get your retention down, get your speed vault into a manageable size, and then start to fully take advantage of the new retention policies. So guys, let's see if I've got any other questions here. Yeah, good point. I don't think I showed that off inside of the other. So yeah, here is back to that remote connection gateway that I opened up. There's a backup job running. We'll go to preferences on this one. So I've come into this through the cloud. I'm not on a local machine. So this way you can clean up devices that without interrupting the user. You'll come into the device preferences tab, go to the archiving tab, just as we did on the local machine. Clean up archive sessions. Notice it says this device is using the new policy, so you can't create new archive rules, but you can still clean up or expire the old archives. And my browser plugin is going to work here just the same. There are 280 retention points here. Let's toggle anything older than 9 months. And we'll scroll down and we can see based on this date right here are those particular restore points or those archive points that can purge out of the system. One thing to note, when expiring archives, if you are expiring the oldest to the newest, you will see the most decrease in space. When you start to selectively pick them in the middle, it's only going to free up space. It's no longer being used by a different archive point. But just because I've unchecked 503 kilobytes here and 85 megs here, it does not guarantee I'll regain 85 megs or 503 kilobytes as part of my storage, because some of the data that was archived here could still be archived as part of one of these more recent sessions, okay? Let's see what else I have here for you guys. I think that's actually about it. Let's get back into my deck. For those of you that would like to know more about retention policies, you want to schedule some time with me on a one-on-one nerd call or any other Cove related backup topic, feel free to take a quick screenshot of this QR code, snap it with your phone now. This will give you a calendar link to see my calendar out about 6 to 8 weeks. Retain this. You can use this today, you can use this in 6 months, and it will allow you to book time with me. Just let me know when you book the calendar, your company information, so that I can look up your account, any trouble tickets, problems, queries, inquiries, things that you would like me to talk to you about on the call, so I can do my homework and come prepared. And then, of course, an acknowledgement that this is not a support ticket. You know, this is not a critical server down. It's not a support escalation, things like that. Because this is booking timeout, normally not same day, sometimes maybe not even same week. I don't want to be a bottleneck for you on an active open support case. So it will direct you to the right mechanisms to utilize for support calls. Now, once you've opened a support case, whether it be a critical restore ticket or just an online help, feel free to drop me an email with your support ticket or respond to your email ticket with me in the CC. And make a quick note adding Eric for visibility, and then I can monitor and follow your ticket, maybe help escalate or provide information. But obviously this QR code is not the right way to escalate a support, okay? I think I've hit all of the QA that we have today, but I do appreciate everybody's time and attention. I've got a couple QR codes that I want to show up for some additional upcoming training and events that you guys might be interested in. And I've got one final poll that I'd like to throw up, was where I sing for my supper a little bit to get a feel for what you liked about the session today and how you would rate that session amongst other boot camps that the nerds do, okay? So upcoming training and events, you guys just missed out on this one. This is a brand new Master of Ransomware Response Masterclass that was put together by our very own Keith Young. So this is designed to teach you about ransomware preparedness, how to craft an incident response plan. There is or are 2 more sessions planned for this one, so the QR code is still valid, although the January one went out, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday this week. So there is another one scheduled for early February. If you scan the QR code there, or you visit enable.com/events, you can get a link to all of the upcoming masterclasses. Masterclasses are going to be a 1 to 1.5 hour session teaching you things like ransomware response or master of disaster recovery inside of the Cove world. You will find masterclasses on RMM and our security platforms as well. So I really do encourage you to take a look at those. Some really, really good knowledge passed to you very, very quickly. The recordings for those will not necessarily be available in the Enable University right away. The best bet is to attend a live session for masterclasses right now. As for other training events, head nerd related, enable.com/events/head nerd event, or this QR code. This is going to give you access to office hours and boot camps conducted by our very own head nerds. There are 7 of us that are working to provide content to you. Great training opportunities. These could be anywhere from 1 hour to 2.5 or 3 hour boot camp sessions, depending on the topics and the technologies. I do a monthly office hour session where we look at roadmaps and feature releases, as well as various boot camps like the one we're going through today. My most recent boot camp before this one was a M365 user offboarding or user license reconciliation and reclamation bootcamp. Taught you how to reclaim those Cove licenses once you have converted your M365 users from billable to shared mailboxes or unlicensed mailboxes. That should show up in the Enable University here very, very shortly. The head nerds do also put together a series of blog articles from time to time, so feel free to hit that at enable.com. Grab blogs from the top URL, or sorry, the top navigation pane, or the QR code on the screen here, and you're going to find patch updates, security updates by our very own Lewis Pope, our head security nerd. He's going to be going through the Microsoft release updates and various industry security events. He'll be teaching you about our new acquisition, AdLumen, and our managed MDR solution, as well as the other Enable security tools. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate that one. I know it's an early morning here. It's an hour out of your day, so I really do want to thank you for your time and attention. If you had to step away or you missed this session, it will be made available inside of the Enable University under Enable Me, utilizing your Enable SSO, MSP Navigator logins, and SSO credentials. Or if you want to come back, you can attend this same a live version of this very session scheduled at 1 p.m. US Eastern Time today. And I'll be going through a very, very similar version of content. Whichever one happens to be better will be the one that's posted into Enable University, okay? Thank you so much for your time and attention. Look forward to talking to you again on a future office hours or boot camp. Have a great day. Thanks.